Previously on Sirius 8, engineer Marcus Vallon was assigned to the remote orbital station Sirius 8, commanded by the diminutive but formidable Azurian Nira. Together they uncovered and stopped a sabotage plot by Lieutenant Torian, who was working for the Black Swarm, a criminal organization seeking access to deadly biological weapons hidden on the devastated planet Credor below. Now, with Federation reinforcements days away, they face an imminent attack from the Black Swarm's main forces. Part 1. Preparing for the attack. 2 more contacts on long-range sensors, reported Ensign Harper, her fingers dancing across the detection console. Tactical configuration, heavily armed. They're not even trying to hide anymore. Nira stood at the command center's main viewport, her small blue form silhouetted against the stars. In the 3 days since Admiral Hernandez's warning, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. What began as a single scout ship had evolved into a gathering fleet, 5 vessels now, with more appearing by the hour. Time estimate until the Hyperion arrives? She asked, not turning from the viewport. 36 hours minimum, Marcus replied, checking the secure channel data for the 5th time that day. We're on our own until then. Nira finally turned, her silver eyes reflecting the red alert lighting that had become Sirius 8's permanent ambient glow. Then we make this station as indigestible as possible. Engineer Valen, report on our defensive modifications. Marcus activated the central holodisplay, showing a 3-dimensional schematic of the station. We've completed the fortification of all critical areas. Maintenance drones have been reprogrammed for security functions. They're not combat units, but they'll provide early warning and basic defensive capability. Show me the external modifications, Nira requested, moving closer to the display. Marcus highlighted the outer ring of the station. We've repurposed the industrial mining lasers from storage. They're designed for asteroid mineral extraction, but with some creative recalibration, they'll function as makeshift point defense weapons, Nira finished, a hint of approval in her voice. Impressive improvisation, engineer. Dr. Chen, who had joined the command staff for emergency preparation, raised an eyebrow. Will they actually stop a military vessel? No, Marcus admitted, but they might make them reconsider a direct assault on the station. Our goal isn't to win a battle, it's to survive until the Hyperion arrives. What about our prisoner? Asked Dr. Chen. Torian hasn't said a word since his capture. Nira's expression hardened. That changes today. We need whatever intelligence he has about Black Swarm tactics and capabilities. She turned to Marcus. Complete the final system tests on the defensive grid. I'll handle Torian personally. Commander, Marcus cautioned, given his previous actions, I'm aware of the risks, Engineer Valen, she cut him off. But time is not a luxury we possess. The security holding cell was located in the station's lower levels, isolated from critical systems by multiple bulkheads. Lieutenant Torian sat on the narrow bunk, his massive frame making the standardized furniture appear childlike. His expression remained impassive as Nira entered, though his eyes tracked her with undisguised contempt. Lieutenant, she acknowledged, standing just beyond the energy barrier that contained him. I trust your accommodations have been adequate. Torian's laugh was devoid of humor. Cut the diplomatic protocol, Commander. We both know why you're here. Indeed, Nira agreed, her tone cooling. Black Swarm vessels are gathering outside this station. Federation reinforcements are en route. Your organization's window of opportunity is closing rapidly. This scenario ends one of 2 ways. Either the Black Swarm is intercepted and destroyed, or they succeed in their mission, but leave you behind as a liability. Your point, Torian asked, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. My point is that you've been abandoned, Lieutenant. Your usefulness to the Black Swarm ended the moment you were captured. Now you face a choice. Cooperate with us and receive consideration during your eventual tribunal, or remain silent and face maximum penalties for treason, attempted mass murder, and collaboration with a terrorist organization. Torian studied her for a long moment. You really believe the Federation cares about this station? About you? They sent you here to die, Commander. Just like they send all your kind to clean up messes no one else wants to touch. Nira didn't react to the provocation. What is the Black Swarm planning? A direct assault? Infiltration? Something else entirely? For several seconds, Torian remained silent. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. a genuine sound of amusement that echoed in the confined space. "You still don't understand what they're really after, do you?" he said. "Yes, the biological weapons are valuable, but they're merely a secondary objective." Nira's silver eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The real prize is buried beneath the surface of Credor," Torian continued, clearly enjoying her confusion, "in a research facility located in what used to be the capital city. Something the original inhabitants were developing before they destroyed themselves. Something your people were involved with." "The Azurians had no presence on Credor before its destruction," Nira stated flatly. "Didn't they?" Torian's smile was knowing. "Then why were you specifically assigned to this station? Why would the Federation send one of their precious problem solvers to oversee a worthless outpost?" "Check your orders, Commander. The fine print, the classification codes. You'll find they don't match the standard Federation protocols." Before Nira could respond, the station's alert system blared. Marcus's voice came through her communicator. "Commander, to the command center, immediately. The defensive grid is showing anomalies across all sectors." Marcus was bent over the main engineering console when Nira arrived, his expression grim as he traced a cascade of system failures through the station's network. "What happened?" she demanded, taking in the chaotic display of warning indicators. "System tests triggered something buried deep in the core programming," he explained, fingers flying across the interface. "Some kind of dormant subroutine that activated when we brought the defensive modifications online." "Torian," Nira suggested. "No, this is more sophisticated," Marcus replied. "Look at the code signature. It's using Federation encryption protocols that weren't even active when Torian was working here. This is recent." A sudden power fluctuation sent lights flickering throughout the command center. Backup systems engaged with a low hum, stabilizing critical functions. "We have minutes before the primary reactor exceeds safety parameters," Marcus warned. "I need to get to the reactor control room. The automated systems aren't responding." Nira made an immediate decision. "Go. Take Harper as backup. I'll coordinate from here and implement isolation protocols if necessary." As Marcus and the ensign rushed from the command center, Dr. Chen moved closer to Nira. "Commander, what Torian told you about the facility on Credor is likely misinformation designed to distract us," Nira finished firmly. Chen's expression suggested otherwise. "Maybe, but there were rumors among the medical staff before you arrived. The previous commander had been requesting geological surveys of specific coordinates on the surface, areas that showed unusual energy readings despite the planet's devastation." Nira's attention sharpened. "Why wasn't this in any of the official reports?" "Because he kept it off the record," Chen replied. "Said it was a personal research project, but he was obsessed, spending hours studying old Credor archives that he'd locked behind security protocols." Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's voice over the comm system. "Commander, we've reached the reactor control room. Situation is critical. The coolant systems are shutting down sequentially. I can override manually, but it's going to be close." "Understood," Nira responded. "Proceed with all necessary measures." The next 10 minutes were a blur of tension as Marcus fought to regain control of the reactor systems. Through the comm link, Nira could hear his rapid instructions to Harper, the hiss of escaping steam, and occasional curses as another system failed. "Primary coolant restored," came his eventual report, voice ragged with exertion. "Reactor temperatures stabilizing. We got lucky. Another 2 minutes and we'd have had a breach." "Casualties?" Nira asked. Harper took a steam burn to her arm. "Nothing serious. We're returning to command." When they arrived, Marcus's uniform was soaked with sweat, his hands reddened from where he'd handled superheated components. "That wasn't a malfunction," he said without preamble. "That was a deliberate sabotage attempt triggered by our defensive preparations." "Torian had accomplices," Nira concluded. "At least one," Marcus agreed. "Someone with high-level access to core systems. Someone still on this station." Nira's expression hardened. "Then we find them, before they succeed where today's attempt failed." Part 2. First Attack. The Black Swarm made their first move 18 hours later. "Incoming vessel," reported the sensor officer. "Configuration matches Federation Registry, Merchant Class Transport Distant Star. They're broadcasting distress signals." On the main viewport, a medium-sized vessel appeared, rotating slowly with obvious damage to its port thrusters. Emergency beacons pulsed from its hull as it drifted toward Sirius 8. It's a trap, Marcus stated flatly. Nira nodded. Obviously, but a clever one. We can't ignore a distress call, even knowing it's false. Their transponder codes check out, the communications officer noted with confusion. Registry verified in the Federation database. The distant star is a legitimate merchant vessel, which was likely captured or destroyed, its identity stolen, Nira replied. Prepare a response team for emergency protocols, but implement full quarantine procedures. Nothing and no one enters this station without complete security scanning. Marcus studied the approaching ship. If they're using this as cover for boarding, they'll have to dock at one of the emergency airlocks. The main bays are too exposed and we've fortified them heavily. Airlocks 3 through 7 are the most vulnerable, Nira agreed. Deploy security teams to each, with orders to avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. I want to know their strength and objective before committing our limited personnel. As preparations were made, Marcus pulled Nira aside. Commander, I should tell you, I've been looking into what Torian said about the research facility on Credor. Her silver eyes fixed on him with sudden intensity. And? There's something there. Classified files buried deep in the station archives, authorization codes I've never seen before. Whatever it is, it's not standard Federation protocol. Before Nira could respond, the station rocked with a sudden impact. Warning klaxons blared as reports flooded in from multiple sectors. Multiple breaches, shouted the security officer. They've bypassed the airlocks entirely, cutting through the hull at maintenance access points in sectors 7, 12, and 18. Nira's response was immediate. Lock down all sectors. Emergency bulkheads activated. All personnel. Defensive positions. The command center doors sealed with a heavy thud as the station went into full battle mode. Through the internal monitoring system, they watched as black armored figures poured through the breached hull sections, moving with practiced efficiency through the corridors. 30-plus hostiles, Marcus counted grimly. Military-grade weapons and armor. These aren't pirates, they're mercenaries. Sector 12 contains the primary life support systems, Nira noted. Sector 18 has direct access to the computer core. Their objectives are clear. Take control of critical systems, then force our surrender. The security officer's console chimed with incoming reports. Commander, they've taken hostages in the residential section. At least 12 crew members. Marcus studied the station schematic, mind racing through options. The command center is secure for now, but we're cut off from most of the station. If they reach the computer core, they can override our lockdown protocols. Nira's expression was coldly determined. Then we don't stay here. Engineer Valen, you and I will proceed to Sector 18 via the maintenance crawlways. Our priority is protecting the computer core. Commander, the security officer protested, protocol dictates you remain in the command center during hostile action. Protocol assumes reinforcements are available, Nira countered. We don't have that luxury. Dr. Chen, you have command until our return. Maintain lockdown and continue monitoring the intruder's movements. Minutes later, Nira and Marcus were crawling through the narrow maintenance tunnels that networked the station. For once, Nira's small stature was an advantage. She moved easily through spaces where Marcus had to contort his larger frame. 5 meters ahead, junction point Theta 9, Marcus whispered, consulting his portable scanner. 3 hostiles in the corridor beyond. They paused at the junction, listening to the heavy footsteps and murmured communications of the Black Swarm operatives outside. Nira extracted a small canister from her utility belt. Concussive stunner, she explained quietly. Non-lethal but effective. On my mark, open the access panel and I'll deploy it. The maneuver worked perfectly. The stunner rolled into the corridor, detonating with a flash and thunderclap that dropped the 3 mercenaries before they could raise their weapons. Marcus and Nira emerged quickly, securing the unconscious hostiles with restraints. Their communications gear is Federation grade, Marcus noted with concern, examining one of the fallen operatives. Again, not something pirates should have access to, which supports Torian's claim of high-level infiltration, Nira agreed. Take their weapons. We might need them. They continued through the corridors, alternately using the maintenance tunnels and secured passageways, working their way toward the computer core. Twice more they encountered Black Swarm teams, using Nira's smaller size to their advantage. She would draw attention while Marcus ambushed from behind, or she would attack from unexpected angles within the station's infrastructure. They were approaching the final corridor leading to the computer core when Marcus's scanner detected a large concentration of hostiles. At least 8 of them, he reported. Heavily armed, and they've established defensive positions. We can't take them by surprise this time. Nira studied the station schematics on her datapad. There's an environmental control junction 1 section over. If we can reach it, we might be able to use it to our advantage. The junction proved to be accessible through a particularly narrow maintenance shaft. Once there, Marcus quickly assessed the controls. This regulates atmosphere for that entire sector, including the computer core area. Can you alter the oxygen levels? Nira asked. Marcus nodded grimly. I can do better than that. This station was designed with fire suppression systems that can flood compartments with halon gas. It displaces oxygen and stops combustion. Non-lethal in short exposures, but it will incapacitate them quickly. Do it, Nira ordered, but we'll need breathing apparatus to enter afterward. Marcus located 2 emergency respirators in a nearby safety cabinet. These will give us about 10 minutes of filtered air, not much, but enough to secure the core and restore normal atmospheric conditions. With preparations complete, Marcus initiated the emergency protocol. Through the monitoring system, they watched as colorless gas flooded the corridors around the computer core. The Black Swarm operatives realized the danger too late. Within seconds, they were collapsing, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. Now, Nira commanded, securing her respirator. They moved swiftly through the gas-filled corridors, stepping over unconscious mercenaries. At the computer core access, Marcus quickly disabled the devices they had attached to the main console. They were trying to download the complete station database, he reported, including all classified files related to Creedor. Nira's silver eyes narrowed behind her respirator. Whatever is hidden on that planet, it's valuable enough to justify this level of attack. With the immediate threat neutralized, Marcus restored normal atmosphere to the sector and contacted the command center. Dr. Chen's relieved voice came through the comm system. Commander, the intruders are retreating. They've taken their wounded and are withdrawing to their ship. Casualties? Nira asked. 3 crew members with minor injuries. All hostages have been recovered safely. There was a pause before Chen continued. But we've just received a transmission from the retreating vessel. They're demanding that you and Engineer Valen surrender yourselves in exchange for their withdrawal. Otherwise, they claim they'll destroy the station with all hands. Marcus and Nira exchanged glances. An empty threat, she replied. Their objective is clearly on Creedor. Destroying the station gains them nothing. Unless they've already achieved their primary objective, Marcus suggested. The attack could have been a distraction while someone else accomplished their real mission. A sudden realization struck him. The prison level. Torian! They raced to the security holding area, only to find 2 guards unconscious and Torian's cell empty. More concerning was the open access panel beside the cell, leading directly to the station's shuttle bay. Alert all sections, Nira ordered into her communicator. Lieutenant Torian has escaped and may be attempting to reach the shuttle bay. They were too late. As they arrived at the bay's observation deck, they watched helplessly as a station shuttle launched, quickly accelerating away from Sirius 8. Can we disable it? Nira demanded. Marcus shook his head. Not from here. They've overridden the remote shutdown protocols. They watched as the shuttle rendezvoused with the fake merchant vessel, both craft then accelerating away from the station. They got what they came for, Marcus observed grimly. Torian. No, Nira corrected, her expression troubled. They got what they came for, plus Torian. The attack, the hostage situation, all of it was calculated to distract us from their true objective. Which was? She turned to face him, silver eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. According to the computer logs, someone accessed the classified files about Creedor during the attack. Files that only became visible once the system was partially compromised. They now have coordinates to whatever facility exists on the planet's surface. So what's our next move? Marcus asked. Nira's response was immediate and unexpected. We go to Creedor. Whatever is hidden there, we can't allow the Black Swarm to reach it first. Part 3. Descent to Creedor. The surface of Creedor appeared even more desolate from the viewport of the descending shuttle. Rust-colored deserts stretched to the horizon, broken occasionally by the skeletal remains of once great cities. The atmosphere, thin, toxic, and perpetually hazed with dust, created a permanent twilight across the devastated landscape. Radiation levels with intolerable parameters, Marcus reported, studying the environmental readouts. Atmosphere is breathable with filtration, but I wouldn't recommend extended exposure. Beside him, Nira piloted the shuttle with practiced precision, compensating for the turbulent air currents that buffeted their descent. She had insisted on handling the controls herself, citing experience with planetary landings that Marcus hadn't known she possessed. The coordinates indicate a location 17 kilometers east of what was once the planetary capital, she said, adjusting their trajectory. Satellite imaging shows structures partially buried by sand drift, but still intact. Their departure from Sirius 8 had been hurried but strategic. With the station secured and the Black Swarm temporarily withdrawn, Nira had made the controversial decision to pursue Torian and his rescuers to the surface. Dr. Chen was left in command, with strict instructions to maintain defensive readiness and continue attempts to contact the approaching Federation cruiser. We have approximately 36 hours before the Hyperion arrives, Nira had explained during their hasty preparations. By then, the Black Swarm will have either secured their objective or failed. Either way, our window of opportunity is narrow. Now as they descended through Credor's toxic atmosphere, Marcus studied their limited intelligence on the planet below. According to these files, the facility was a joint research center, officially designated for development of biological countermeasures, but with a classified secondary purpose. And that purpose involved Azurians, Nira stated, her tone making it clear this was not a question. Yes, though the specifics are heavily redacted, Marcus confirmed. What I can piece together suggests your people were consulting on some kind of biological adaptation project, something to do with surviving in hostile environments. A sudden alert from the shuttle's sensors interrupted their conversation. 2 vessels on approach, Marcus reported, checking the readings. Small craft, similar to our shuttle. They're on an intercept course. Black Swarm scouts, Nira concluded. They must have detected our launch from the station. Options? Marcus asked, already calculating evasive trajectories. Nira's hands moved across the controls, altering their descent path. We can't outrun them in atmosphere, but we can use the terrain to our advantage. There's a dust storm approaching from the west. If we can reach it before they intercept us, we might lose them in the reduced visibility. What followed was a masterclass in tactical flying. Nira pushed the shuttle to its structural limits, diving sharply toward the planet's surface before pulling up mere hundreds of meters above the ruins of a shattered city. The pursuing craft followed, their superior speed closing the distance rapidly. Weapon range in 30 seconds, Marcus warned, watching the tactical display. They won't fire immediately, Nira replied confidently. They want to know why we're here, what we know. Capture is more valuable to them than elimination. As if to contradict her assessment, a warning shot streaked past their viewport, missing the shuttle by meters. You were saying? Marcus commented dryly. A warning, not an attempt to destroy, Nira clarified, banking the shuttle hard toward the approaching wall of swirling orange dust. Hold on. This transition will be turbulent. The shuttle plunged into the dust storm, visibility instantly reduced to near zero. Warning indicators flashed across the control panel as abrasive particles battered the external sensors and hull. Nira flew by instruments alone, her blue fingers dancing across the controls with unwavering precision. They're still on our tail, Marcus reported, watching the increasingly unreliable sensor readings. But falling back, they're more cautious in the storm. As they should be, Nira replied grimly. These conditions can strip a shuttle's external components in minutes. We need to find shelter soon. Through a combination of skill and calculated risk, Nira guided their craft deeper into the ruins of the ancient city. The storm provided cover, but also increased the danger of collision with the skeletal structures that loomed suddenly out of the swirling dust. There, Marcus said suddenly, pointing to a gap in the ruins. The entrance to what appeared to be a massive subterranean parking structure, partially collapsed but still offering shelter from the storm. We can set down there and wait them out. The landing was rough but controlled, the shuttle settling onto the cracked concrete with a juddering impact that rattled every component. As the engines powered down, The howling of the storm outside became the dominant sound, a constant, eerie moaning as dust-laden winds swept through the ruins. "Environmental suits," Nira ordered, already moving to the storage compartment. "Full protection, even inside the structure. Creedor's contaminants can penetrate standard clothing." They donned the bulky protective gear quickly, checking each other's seals before opening the shuttle's hatch. The air that rushed in was thick with corrosive dust that instantly coated their faceplates with a fine orange film. "Visibility reduced to 10 meters, Marcus noted, activating his suit's enhanced vision systems. "But no sign of pursuit. I think we lost them in the storm." "Temporarily," Nira cautioned. "We should move quickly. The coordinates indicate the facility is 5 kilometers northeast of our position." "Through this?" Marcus gestured at the raging storm outside their shelter. "The alternative is waiting for the storm to clear, by which time the Black Swarm will have found us," Nira replied pragmatically. "Surface storms on Creedor can last for days. We don't have that luxury." With grim determination, they gathered essential supplies and equipment, including weapons, environmental sensors, and emergency rations. The shuttle was secured against the storm as best as possible, though both knew the abrasive dust would likely render it inoperable within hours. Their journey through the ruined city was nightmarish. Visibility rarely exceeded a few meters, the swirling dust transforming familiar objects into looming monsters that resolved into abandoned vehicles or collapsed building fragments only at the last moment. The wind's constant assault made communication difficult even through their suit intercoms, forcing them to stay within arm's reach of each other. More unsettling were the occasional glimpses of Creedor's past glory. A towering statue of some forgotten leader, half buried in dust but still proud. The skeletal framework of what had once been a soaring skyscraper. The preserved fragment of a park where petrified trees stood in eternal stillness. "It's hard to imagine this was once considered the jewel of the sector," Marcus commented during a brief rest in the lee of a collapsed wall. "Pride in technological advancement without wisdom," Nira replied, her voice somber even through the intercom distortion. "A lesson the Federation has yet to fully comprehend." 3 exhausting hours later, they reached the outskirts of what their maps identified as the research district, a complex of hardened structures that had weathered Creedor's destruction better than the surrounding city. Here the storm's intensity had somewhat abated, allowing glimpses of the facility they sought. A sprawling compound surrounded by the remains of a security perimeter. "No signs of the Black Swarm yet," Marcus noted, scanning the approach with enhanced optics. "But they can't be far behind." "They may have already arrived and established a position inside," Nira cautioned. "We proceed with full tactical awareness." The facility's main entrance was sealed by a massive blast door, designed to withstand the apocalypse that had eventually consumed the planet. Beside it, a security terminal remained operational, drawing power from some still-functioning internal system. "Federation security protocols," Marcus observed, examining the interface. "But an older generation, this predates current encryption methods." Nira stepped forward, studying the terminal. "Stand aside, engineer. This will require administrative access codes." To Marcus's surprise, she entered a complex sequence from memory. Not a standard Federation command code, but something longer and more intricate. The terminal processed for several seconds before the blast doors began to slide open, with a groaning protest of long-disused mechanisms. "How did you—" he began. "Later," she cut him off, drawing her weapon as the doors revealed a dimly lit corridor beyond. "Be ready for anything." The interior of the facility was in remarkable condition compared to the devastation outside. Emergency lighting still functioned, casting eerie blue illumination through corridors designed for utility rather than aesthetics. The air, while stale, was clean enough that they could remove their helmets, though they kept their suits sealed otherwise. "Preservation systems still operational," Marcus noted, checking his environmental scanner. "Impressive after all this time." "This facility was designed to survive planetary catastrophe," Nira replied, moving with practiced caution through the corridors. The Federation anticipated Creedor's war might escalate to extinction-level events. They proceeded deeper into the complex, following directional indicators toward what was labeled as primary research. The silence was absolute, broken only by their footsteps and the occasional distant groan of the structure settling. The first sign that they weren't alone came in the form of a discarded breathing apparatus, standard Black Swarm issue, recently used and hastily abandoned. "They're here," Nira whispered, immediately taking cover against a wall and signaling Marcus to do the same. "And moving with purpose. They know where they're going." "How?" "Even with the coordinates, this place is massive." "The same way we do," Nira replied grimly. "They have someone who's been here before." They advanced with increased caution, weapons ready. The facility's layout became more complex. Laboratories branching off the main corridor, storage areas filled with equipment covered in protective sealant, and occasionally areas that had been deliberately sealed with warning indicators that even decades couldn't diminish. "Biological containment," Marcus murmured, examining one such door. Whatever they were working with, they took no chances with accidental exposure. "Focus," Nira reminded him. "Our objective is to reach the central research area before—" The distant sound of weapons fire cut her off, not the controlled bursts of trained operatives, but the chaotic exchange of a surprise encounter. Someone had found something, or someone, they weren't expecting. They moved toward the sound, using the facility's maintenance passages to approach undetected. The firing had stopped by the time they reached a vantage point overlooking a massive central chamber filled with advanced research equipment. Below them, a group of Black Swarm operatives stood in a defensive circle, weapons trained outward at shadows. In the center of their formation stood Torian and a figure Marcus didn't recognize, a woman in the uniform of a Federation science officer, though the insignia had been removed. "Biological secure?" Torian was asking her, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Samples extracted and contained," the woman confirmed. "But we have a problem. The activation sequence requires specific genetic markers, Azurian markers. We can't bypass it." Torian's laugh held no humor. "How convenient that our little blue commander has decided to join us. She'll be along shortly. Our scouts reported a shuttle entering atmosphere." "And if she doesn't cooperate?" the scientist asked. "Everyone cooperates eventually," Torian replied coldly. "The question is merely how much persuasion is required." Marcus glanced at Nira, whose expression had become unreadable. "What are they talking about?" he whispered. "What requires Azurian genetic markers?" "The containment protocols," she replied quietly. "This facility wasn't just researching biological weapons. It was developing targeted countermeasures, weapons that could neutralize specific biological agents without harming surrounding ecosystems." "And your people were involved?" "Azurians have natural immunity to many biological toxins," Nira explained. "Our physiology evolved in environments that would be hostile to most humanoid species. The Federation used this trait to develop countermeasures that could be deployed against biological warfare." Understanding dawned on Marcus. The Black Swarm doesn't want the weapons, they want the countermeasures. Universal protection against any biological attack would be priceless in the right markets. "Precisely. And apparently access to those countermeasures requires Azurian genetic authentication." Nira's silver eyes hardened with resolve. "We need to reach the primary containment vault before they realize we're here." Using their elevated position to their advantage, they circled the central chamber, staying in the maintenance passages that networked the facility. Marcus followed Nira's lead, increasingly aware that she navigated the complex with suspicious familiarity. "You've been here before," he finally stated as they reached a secured doorway marked with both Federation and Azurian symbols. Nira paused, her hand hovering over the access panel. "Not physically," she admitted, "but I've studied the schematics. All Azurian officers in Federation service are briefed on facilities where our unique capabilities might be required." Before Marcus could respond, the door slid open, revealing a smaller laboratory beyond. At its center stood a cylindrical containment unit, glowing with a soft blue light reminiscent of Nira's skin tone. She moved toward it with purpose, activating a control panel that responded immediately to her touch. "The countermeasure samples are stored in a genetically locked containment system," she explained as she worked. "Only an Azurian can release them, a failsafe against misuse." "And you're going to release them now?" Marcus asked, concerned. "No," Nira replied firmly. "I'm going to destroy them." The statement hung in the air between them, its implications immediately apparent. The Federation won't approve, Marcus said carefully. The Federation doesn't understand what would happen if these countermeasures were reverse engineered, Nira responded, her fingers continuing their precise dance across the controls. They could be modified to target specific genetic markers, turned from shields into swords. Imagine a biological weapon that could selectively eliminate entire species while leaving others untouched. The containment unit hummed with increasing intensity as Nira implemented her commands. This facility should have been destroyed after Creedor fell, she continued. Instead, it was preserved, a temptation for precisely the kind of organization we now face. A new sound interrupted them, the unmistakable footsteps of multiple people approaching their position. They've found us, Marcus warned, moving to secure the door. I need 2 more minutes, Nira said, her concentration unwavering. The purge sequence requires multiple authentications. Marcus drew his weapon, taking position beside the doorway. You'll have them. The first Black Swarm operative who appeared in the doorway fell immediately to Marcus's precisely aimed shot. The second managed to return fire, forcing Marcus into cover as energy pulses scorched the wall behind him. 1 minute, Nira reported calmly, despite the chaos erupting around her. Marcus leaned out to fire again, catching another attacker in the shoulder before ducking back as the doorway erupted with return fire. We're going to need an exit strategy once that's done. The facility has emergency evacuation tubes designed to reach the surface, regardless of structural damage, Nira replied, still focused on the containment unit. Access point is in the far corner. More attackers appeared, forcing Marcus to expend his weapon's charge in a series of defensive bursts that kept them temporarily at bay. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. Sequence initiated, Nira announced, finally stepping back from the console. The containment unit's glow intensified, changing from blue to a pulsing red. We have 3 minutes until complete molecular breakdown of all samples. Evacuation tubes? Marcus reminded her urgently as the weapon's fire intensified. They made a desperate dash across the laboratory, staying low as energy pulses cut through the air above them. The evacuation system was antiquated but functional, a gravity-assisted tube system designed to rapidly transport personnel to the surface in emergency situations. You first, Nira ordered, activating the system with another genetic scan. Marcus didn't argue, diving into the open tube and immediately feeling the frictionless field engage, propelling him upward through the facility's layers toward the distant surface. Nira followed seconds later, the tube sealing behind her as the evacuation system recognized the emergency purge in progress. Their ascent was disorienting, a controlled fall upward through darkness occasionally broken by status lights marking their progress through the facility's levels. Behind them, barely audible through the tube structure, came the distinct sound of an explosion, the countermeasure samples beginning their destructive breakdown. The evacuation tubes deposited them unceremoniously on the surface, half a kilometer from the facility's main entrance. The storm had abated somewhat, visibility improved enough to see the Black Swarm vessels parked near the main entrance, and the figures racing toward them in obvious panic. The purge is spreading faster than anticipated, Nira observed, watching as the ground beneath the facility began to sink, collapsing inward as the molecular breakdown consumed not just the samples, but the containment systems designed to house them. Will it stop? Marcus asked, concerned about a potentially catastrophic chain reaction. Yes. The process is self-limiting, designed to destroy biological samples without risking further contamination of the environment. She turned to watch as the Black Swarm operatives, including Torian, reached their vessels and began emergency launch procedures. They know it's over. Whatever they manage to extract will be insufficient for their purposes. As the Black Swarm ships lifted off, accelerating rapidly away from the collapsing facility, Marcus and Nira began their own trek across the devastated landscape, seeking shelter before the storm could intensify again. The Federation will want answers, Marcus noted as they walked, about the facility, the countermeasures, your decision to destroy them. Let them ask, Nira replied with unexpected steel in her voice. Some weapons are too dangerous to exist, regardless of their intended purpose. The Federation knows this. They simply prefer not to acknowledge it. They found shelter in the remains of a hardened communications bunker, its structure still sound despite decades of Creedor's hostile environment. As they established a makeshift camp to wait out the approaching storm, Marcus finally asked the question that had been forming since they first entered the facility. The genetic authentication, your knowledge of the facility, there's more to your assignment to Sirius 8 than you've admitted, isn't there? Nira was silent for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting the portable light they'd set up. Yes, she finally acknowledged. I was sent to Sirius 8 not just to salvage a failing station, but to monitor this facility. Federation intelligence had received reports of increased interest in Credor from various factions. My mission included ensuring the countermeasures remain secure. And if necessary, destroying them, Marcus finished. A contingency plan, yes. She met his gaze directly. Does that change your opinion of me, Engineer Valen? Marcus considered the question carefully. It changes my understanding of the situation, he finally replied. But no, it doesn't change my opinion of you. You made the right call. Those countermeasures in the wrong hands would have been catastrophic. Relief flickered briefly across her features before her professional composure returned. We should rest while we can. When the storm clears, we'll need to find a way to signal Sirius 8 for extraction. As they settled into their improvised shelter, the howling wind outside increasing as the storm intensified again, Marcus found himself reflecting on how far they'd come from their first meeting, from professional wariness to something approaching genuine trust. Whatever happened next, he realized, they would face it together. Part 4. Betrayal and Revelation. The storm lasted through the night, its intensity gradually diminishing as Credor's weak sun rose, casting sickly light through the toxic atmosphere. They emerged from their shelter to find the landscape transformed, dunes shifted, new ruins exposed, old landmarks buried. In the distance where the research facility had stood, only a massive depression remained, the structure completely collapsed upon itself. Our communicator is functional but limited, Marcus reported, checking their equipment. We can send a narrow beam transmission to Sirius 8, but it will take precise targeting given the atmospheric interference. We'll need higher ground, Nira observed, scanning their surroundings. That structure might serve. She pointed to what appeared to be a partially collapsed transmission tower, still standing on a ridge overlooking their position. The climb was arduous, the terrain treacherous with shifting sands and hidden debris. Twice they were forced to detour around impassable sections, adding hours to their journey. By the time they reached the tower's base, Credor's sun was high overhead, its radiation only partially filtered by the dust-filled atmosphere. This should work, Marcus said, examining the tower's structure. If I can climb to that maintenance platform, we'll have line of sight to Sirius 8's orbit. I'll secure the perimeter, Nira decided, drawing her weapon. We can't assume the Black Swarm has completely abandoned the area. Marcus began his ascent, carefully testing each handhold on the tower's corroded framework. The maintenance platform was 30 meters up, once a routine climb for technicians with proper equipment, now a dangerous endeavor on deteriorating metal weakened by decades of Credor's corrosive environment. He was halfway up when the first bolt gave way, nearly sending him plummeting to the ground. Only a desperate grab for an adjacent support saved him, his weight causing the entire section to groan ominously. Marcus, Nira called from below, using his first name in her concern. I'm all right, he assured her, finding a more secure position. But this is going to be slower than I thought. Carefully testing each step before committing his weight, Marcus continued the climb. The platform, when he finally reached it, was in better condition than expected. Designed to withstand Credor's harsh environment, its primary components still functional despite the tower's partial collapse. I'm setting up the communicator, he reported over his suit's link. Should have connection in approximately 5 minutes. Make it 3, Nira replied tersely. We have company. Marcus risked a glance down to see a small transport vehicle approaching their position, its design matching Black Swarm tactical units. How many? At least 4, Nira answered, taking cover behind a collapsed wall segment. They're moving cautiously. They don't know our exact position yet. Working with renewed urgency, Marcus connected their communicator to the tower's remaining power systems, boosting its signal strength. The targeting system required careful calibration. Sirius 8's orbit meant they had a narrow window of opportunity before the station moved behind Credor's horizon. Signal established, he reported after tense minutes of adjustment. Transmitting distress beacon and coordinates now. Confirm reception, came Dr. Chen's welcome voice through the static. Dispatching rescue shuttle, ETA 90 minutes. Be advised, Federation cruiser Hyperion has arrived and reports Black Swarm vessels attempting to leave the system. Acknowledged, Marcus replied. Be aware we have hostiles at our position. Approach with caution. Understood. Hyperion is deploying security teams to your coordinates. Hold position. Below, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Black Swarm operatives had spotted Nira's position and were deploying in a standard flanking pattern, using the ruined landscape for cover as they closed in. I'm coming down, Marcus informed her, already beginning his descent. Negative, Nira countermanded. Maintain your position. You're more vulnerable on the tower than at either top or bottom. She was right, of course. Climbing down would expose him to fire with no ability to take cover or return fire. But watching from above as she faced multiple attackers alone was unacceptable. I can provide covering fire from here, he offered instead, drawing his weapon. Save your charge, Nira instructed. They haven't spotted you yet. That's our advantage. Her tactical assessment proved correct. The Black Swarm operatives, focused entirely on her position, failed to consider the possibility of a second defender above them. Nira used this oversight masterfully, drawing their attention with carefully timed movements while avoiding their concentrated fire. Marcus watched with growing admiration as she outmaneuvered opponents twice her size, using the terrain and their own tactics against them. When one operative moved too close to her position, thinking he had flanked her successfully, she ambushed him with brutal efficiency. A precisely aimed shot followed by a swift close-quarters takedown that left the much larger attacker incapacitated. The remaining operatives, now aware they faced a more dangerous opponent than anticipated, adjusted their approach. They spread out further, using coordinated movement to limit Nira's options, while maintaining communication through hand signals. They're good, Marcus observed over the comlink. Military training, not just mercenaries. Former Federation Special Operations, Nira confirmed, ducking as a shot passed just over her position. Likely discharged for conduct violations and recruited by the Black Swarm for their skills. The standoff continued for tense minutes, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The Black Swarm operatives were clearly waiting for reinforcements, maintaining pressure without fully committing to an assault that would expose them. Then the situation changed dramatically. A new figure emerged from the transport vehicle. Lieutenant Torian, his massive form unmistakable even at a distance. More concerning was the heavy weapon he carried, a military-grade plasma cannon capable of reducing Nira's cover to molecules. Commander, Torian's amplified voice carried across the battlefield. A reasonable discussion seems in order, given our circumstances. Nothing about your actions suggests reasonableness, Lieutenant, Nira replied, her voice equally projected despite her smaller size. Perhaps not, Torian acknowledged, but pragmatism remains valuable. Federation forces are approaching, a fact that poses problems for both of us. For you, perhaps, Nira corrected. I welcome their arrival. Torian's laugh was audible even from Marcus's position. Do you? Consider what they'll find. A classified facility destroyed, invaluable research lost, all on your orders. Even for an Azurian of your status, that requires significant explanation. I acted within my authority, Nira stated firmly. Did you? Torian countered. Or did you exceed that authority, making a unilateral decision that rightfully belonged to Federation leadership? How confident are you that your superiors will support your judgment when billions in research lie in ruins? Despite herself, Nira hesitated, a momentary pause that confirmed Torian's words had found their mark. Marcus realized that despite her certainty in the decision to destroy the countermeasures, she wasn't immune to concerns about how that decision would be received. What do you propose? She finally asked, her tone cautious. A mutual extraction, Torian offered. Our vessel can accommodate both of us. We leave together, go our separate ways beyond Federation space. You avoid court-martial for exceeding authority. I avoid prosecution for actions taken under orders. Orders? Nira questioned sharply. Whose orders, Lieutenant? Torian spread his hands in a gesture of false openness. Did you never question why a facility of this importance was left with such minimal security? Why your assignment to Sirius 8 came with classified parameters, even you weren't fully briefed on. There are factions within the Federation who believe certain technologies are too valuable to lose, regardless of their potential for misuse. From his elevated position, Marcus could see what Torian couldn't: a subtle movement behind the Black Swarm operatives, the glint of light on Federation combat armor. The Hyperion security team was moving into position, using the ruined landscape for cover just as effectively as their opponents. "I assume Engineer Valen is included in this generous extraction offer?" Nira asked, clearly stalling for time. "Unfortunately, no," Torian replied with false regret. "His knowledge of these events makes him a liability all parties would prefer eliminated. His death will be attributed to the hazards of Credor's environment, a regrettable casualty during a heroic but failed mission." Marcus tensed, carefully adjusting his position to keep the approaching Federation security team in view without revealing their presence to Torian. They needed just a few more minutes to complete their encirclement. "A tempting offer, Lieutenant," Nira responded, "but I find myself questioning your sincerity, given your previous betrayals." "A reasonable concern," Torian conceded, "but consider our mutual interests. Neither of us benefits from Federation scrutiny of this incident. You've already destroyed what I came for. My employers will be disappointed, but not surprised. They understand the concept of acceptable losses." "And who exactly are your employers?" Nira pressed, maintaining the dialogue. Torian smiled thinly. "Individuals who recognize that the Federation's monopoly on certain technologies creates dangerous imbalances. People who believe advanced defenses should be more equitably distributed." "Weapons dealers masquerading as idealists," Nira concluded. "The distinction is less clear than you might imagine, Commander." Torian shifted his stance, his patience visibly waning. "My offer expires in 30 seconds. After that, we resort to less diplomatic methods of resolution." Marcus could see the Federation team was in position, awaiting the signal to act. He needed to alert Nira without tipping off Torian. "Commander," he said over their private comm channel, keeping his voice low, "Federation security is in position behind the Black Swarm operatives. On your signal." To her credit, Nira's expression betrayed nothing of this new information. "Your offer is rejected, Lieutenant," she stated clearly. "I stand by my decisions and will face whatever consequences they entail." Torian's expression hardened. "As you wish, Commander. A pity we couldn't reach an arrangement." He raised the plasma cannon, aiming it directly at her position. "Any final thoughts?" "Just one," Nira replied calmly. "Always secure your perimeter." At her words, chaos erupted as the Federation's security team launched their assault. Precision fire caught 2 Black Swarm operatives immediately, while the others scrambled for cover, suddenly caught between Nira's position and attackers at their rear. Torian, however, maintained his focus on Nira, triggering the plasma cannon in a devastating burst that vaporized her cover in a blinding flash. Marcus watched in horror, certain she had been caught in the blast, until he spotted her rolling clear, using the distraction of the Federation assault to change position. Taking advantage of the confusion, Marcus opened fire from his elevated position, targeting the Black Swarm operatives attempting to regroup around Torian. His shots caught one in the shoulder, spinning the man into the open where Federation forces could target him more effectively. The battle was brief but intense. Outnumbered and surrounded, the Black Swarm operatives fought with the desperation of those who knew capture meant lifetime imprisonment. Torian proved particularly formidable, using the plasma cannon to create barriers of superheated air that kept Federation forces at bay while he attempted to reach his transport. He had nearly made it when Nira intercepted him, appearing from behind a collapsed wall to place herself directly in his path. Despite the massive size difference between them, she stood her ground, weapon raised. "Surrender, Lieutenant," she commanded. "It's over." Torian's response was to swing the plasma cannon toward her, a move she had anticipated. Before he could fire, she had already dropped to the ground, firing 3 precise shots into the weapon's power coupling. The destabilized cannon emitted a high-pitched whine as its containment field began to fail. With a curse, Torian released the weapon, shoving it away from himself as he lunged toward Nira. The cannon exploded seconds later, the concussive force throwing both of them violently in opposite directions. Marcus was already descending the tower, abandoning caution in his haste to reach the ground. By the time he arrived, Federation security had secured the remaining Black Swarm operatives. Torian lay unconscious, multiple weapons trained on his immobile form. "Nira!" Marcus called, searching frantically through the dust and debris thrown up by the explosion. He found her partially buried under a collapsed section of wall, her small form frighteningly still. Carefully, he cleared the debris, checking for vital signs with shaking hands. "Medic!" he shouted, relief flooding through him as he detected a pulse. "We need a medic here!" Federation medical personnel responded immediately, gently moving him aside to assess and stabilize her condition. Multiple fractures, concussion, but no critical organ damage, the lead medic reported. She needs immediate evacuation to the Hyperion's medical bay. Within minutes, a Federation shuttle had landed, its medical team transferring Nira to a stabilization unit, while security personnel secured the Black Swarm prisoners. Marcus found himself briefing the Federation commander, a stern-faced woman with colonel's insignia, on the events of the past 24 hours. "The facility?" she asked, her expression revealing nothing. "Destroyed," Marcus confirmed. Commander Nira determined the countermeasures posed too great a risk if captured. "I see." The colonel made a notation on her datapad. "A significant decision for a station commander to make unilaterally. She acted within the parameters of her classified orders," Marcus stated firmly, despite having no confirmation this was true, and prevented technologies with catastrophic potential from falling into the hands of terrorists. The colonel studied him for a moment before nodding slightly. "We'll sort out the authorization questions later. For now, you both require medical attention and debriefing aboard the Hyperion." As they boarded the shuttle, Marcus glanced back at the devastated landscape of Crador, a monument to the consequences of technology without restraint. Whatever repercussions awaited, he was certain of one thing. Nira had made the right choice, regardless of what Federation bureaucracy might eventually decide. Part 5, Aftermath and New Beginnings. The Hyperion's medical bay was a stark contrast to Sirius 8's improvised facility. State-of-the-art equipment, specialized personnel, and the subtle hum of advanced life support systems created an atmosphere of clinical precision. Marcus sat beside Nira's recovery pod, watching as nanomolecular treatments accelerated the healing of her injuries. "Her physiology is remarkable," Dr. Alara, the Hyperion's chief medical officer, observed as she checked the latest scans. "Azurians recover at nearly twice the rate of humans, particularly from trauma injuries. She should regain consciousness within the hour." "And long-term prognosis?" Marcus asked. "Full recovery expected within days rather than weeks," the doctor assured him. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on our other patients." Left alone with Nira, Marcus found himself reflecting on everything that had transpired since his arrival at Sirius 8. What had begun as a routine engineering assignment had evolved into something he could never have anticipated: conspiracy, combat, and the development of a partnership based on mutual respect that transcended their obvious differences. His thoughts were interrupted as Nira's silver eyes opened, immediately alert despite her injuries. "Marcus," she acknowledged, her voice weak but clear. "Status report." He couldn't help but smile at the familiar demand. "Torian and his remaining operatives are in the Hyperion's brig. The Black Swarm vessels attempting to leave the system were intercepted and captured. Sirius 8 remains fully operational under Dr. Chen's temporary command, and you've been unconscious for approximately 7 hours. "The facility?" she asked, attempting to sit up before grimacing with pain. "Completely destroyed," Marcus assured her, gently encouraging her to remain still. Nothing salvageable remained. Relief softened her features momentarily before her professional demeanor reasserted itself. "The Federation commander? I assume I'm facing questions about that decision." "Colonel Vashti has been debriefing me while you recovered," Marcus confirmed. "She seems primarily concerned with authorization protocols rather than the decision itself." "As expected," Nira murmured, "bureaucracy remains consistent regardless of circumstances." Before they could continue, the medical bay doors opened to admit Colonel Vashti herself, a tall, imposing woman whose close-cropped gray hair and penetrating gaze suggested both extensive experience and little patience for evasion. "Commander Nira," she acknowledged, approaching the recovery pod. "Dr. Alara informs me you're conscious and stable. I trust you're feeling improved?" "Sufficiently functional for debriefing, Colonel," Nira replied formally. "Good, because we have much to discuss." Vashti glanced at Marcus. "Engineer Valen has provided his perspective on events, but certain aspects require your personal confirmation. I take full responsibility for the destruction of the research facility, Nira stated without hesitation. The decision was mine alone. A decision that destroyed decades of research and billions in Federation investment, Vashti noted, her tone neutral. Under normal circumstances, such an action would result in immediate court-martial. Marcus tensed, preparing to defend Nira's decision, but Vashti raised a hand to forestall interruption. However, she continued, these circumstances are far from normal. Shortly after your signal was received, Sirius 8 transmitted the complete data package you had compiled before your descent to Credor. It provides compelling evidence of high-level Federation involvement in the Black Swarm's operations. This revelation caught both Nira and Marcus by surprise. Dr. Chen sent our investigation files, Marcus asked. Along with additional intelligence gathered during your absence, Vashti confirmed. It appears Lieutenant Torian was not exaggerating when he claimed to be operating under orders from within the Federation. Several encrypted communications were discovered in the station's secured archives. Communications that had been deliberately hidden from standard security protocols. Who? Nira asked, her silver eyes intense despite her weakened state. Admiral Prentice, Vashti replied grimly, head of Federation Research Division and apparently silent partner in a particularly ambitious weapons development consortium. He's been taken into custody pending investigation. Prentice? Nira seemed genuinely shocked. He was the one who personally approved my assignment to Sirius 8? Yes, Vashti nodded. It appears he placed you there as both guardian and potential scapegoat. If the facility remained secure, the Federation maintained access to valuable research. If it was compromised, your Azurian heritage made you the perfect fall figure. Your people's known objections to biological weapons research would make your motivation suspect. The implications settled heavily between them. A calculated strategy, Nira acknowledged, her voice tight with controlled anger. One that nearly succeeded, but ultimately failed thanks to your actions and Engineer Valen's assistance, Vashti concluded, which brings us to the matter at hand, your future assignments. I assume I'm being relieved of command, Nira said, resignation evident in her tone. On the contrary, Vashti replied, surprising them both. The Federation Council, upon reviewing the preliminary evidence, has authorized a complete reassessment of Sirius 8's strategic importance. The station will be upgraded to a full monitoring and research outpost with expanded personnel and resources. She consulted her datapad before continuing. You're being offered continued command with promotion to full commander rather than acting status. Additionally, you'll have authority to select your senior staff without traditional approval channels, a recognition of your demonstrated judgment under extreme circumstances. Nira's expression remained carefully controlled, but Marcus could see the subtle signs of her astonishment, a slight widening of her silver eyes, the momentary stillness of her normally animated hands. And the facility on Credor, she asked cautiously. Will remain destroyed, Vashti assured her. The Federation Council has classified the entire incident and placed the planet under enhanced quarantine protocols. No further research involving Credor's biological agents will be authorized. Relief visibly washed over Nira's features before she composed herself again. Thank you, Colonel. I accept the continued command. Excellent, Vashti nodded briskly. As for you, Engineer Valen, your actions have also been noted with approval. You're being offered the position of Chief Engineer for the expanded station, with appropriate rank advancement. Marcus glanced at Nira, whose subtle nod was all the confirmation he needed. I accept as well, Colonel. Thank you. Very good. Once Commander Nira is medically cleared, you'll both return to Sirius 8 to oversee the transition. The Hyperion will remain in orbit to provide security and technical assistance. Vashti rose to leave, then paused. One final matter. Your handling of this situation, while unorthodox, demonstrated exceptional judgment under pressure. The Federation needs officers willing to make difficult decisions based on principle rather than political expediency. Remember that in the challenges ahead. With those unexpected words of approval, she departed, leaving Nira and Marcus to process the dramatic reversal of their expected fates. That was unexpected, Marcus finally commented. Indeed, Nira agreed, her silver eyes thoughtful. Though I suspect Colonel Vashti has her own agenda in this matter. The arrest of an admiral will create significant political turbulence within the Federation command structure. And having allies who've demonstrated loyalty to principles rather than persons would be valuable, Marcus concluded, understanding her implication. Precisely. Nira attempted to sit up again, this time more successfully despite obvious discomfort. Politics aside, we have accomplished something significant. Creedor's weapons remain contained, the Black Swarm has been dealt a serious blow, and Sirius 8 will finally receive the resources it deserves. Marcus smiled at her characteristic focus on practicalities. And you've received official recognition of your capabilities, without qualification or reservation. As have you, she pointed out. Chief Engineer is a significant advancement from your previous posting. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Alara's return. Commander, your recovery is progressing excellently, but you require rest to complete the nanomolecular treatments. Engineer Valen, I must insist you allow my patient some uninterrupted recovery time. Of course, Doctor, Marcus agreed, rising from his chair. Commander, I'll check on the Sirius 8 status reports and return later. As he turned to leave, Nira's voice stopped him. Marcus. He looked back to find her silver eyes fixed on him with unusual intensity. Thank you, she said simply, for your trust, for your assistance, for treating you as Commander Nira rather than the Azurian, he suggested gently. The faintest smile touched her blue features. Yes, that most of all, perhaps. Rest well, Commander, he replied warmly. We have a station to rebuild when you're recovered. 2 weeks later, Sirius 8 was transforming. The Hyperion remained in orbit, shuttles constantly moving between the cruiser and the station as personnel and equipment were transferred. What had once been a neglected outpost was rapidly evolving into a state-of-the-art monitoring facility, its strategic importance finally acknowledged with appropriate resources. Marcus stood in the newly expanded engineering section, surrounded by equipment that would have seemed like fantasy months earlier. His team, now numbering 15 specialists rather than the skeleton crew he'd inherited, worked efficiently to integrate the new systems. Chief Engineer, a familiar voice addressed him from the doorway, I require your assessment of the defensive upgrades. He turned to find Nira standing there, fully recovered from her injuries and resplendent in a new commander's uniform that had been properly tailored to her small stature. The silver insignia on her collar caught the light as she moved, matching her distinctive eyes. Commander, he acknowledged with a smile, the defensive systems are ahead of schedule. Weapons grid at 87% operational status, shield generators fully integrated. Will be at complete capability within 48 hours. Excellent, she approved, gesturing for him to accompany her. Walk with me, Chief Engineer. There are matters we should discuss. They moved through corridors that were now properly maintained, passing crew members who acknowledged their commander with genuine respect rather than the reluctant compliance of before. Marcus noted how Nira interacted differently with her expanded crew, still professional and authoritative, but with a new openness that had been absent when he first arrived. The crew has changed its perspective, he observed as they entered a newly constructed observation deck that offered a panoramic view of Creedor below. As have I, perhaps, Nira admitted, stopping before the viewport. Recent events have been instructive in many ways. How so? Marcus asked, genuinely curious about her introspection. Nira considered her words carefully before responding. I have spent my career operating under certain assumptions, that my value to the Federation was primarily technical, that my heritage would always be viewed as a curiosity at best and a limitation at worst, that acceptance would never extend beyond tolerance. She turned to face him directly. You challenged those assumptions from our first meeting, not through declarations or protestations, but through actions. You evaluated me based on competence rather than appearance. You questioned when appropriate, supported when necessary, and never once suggested my physical characteristics determine my capabilities. That should be the baseline for professional interaction, Marcus pointed out, not something deserving special recognition. Perhaps, Nira acknowledged, but it is rarer than you might imagine, and it created a foundation for genuine trust that proved invaluable during our challenges. She gestured to the station spreading out around them. This expanded command represents an opportunity to implement that philosophy more broadly. Which brings me to the purpose of this conversation. She handed him a datapad containing personnel files. These are candidates for the remaining senior staff positions. I would value your assessment before making final selections. Marcus accepted the datapad, recognizing the significance of her request. You're building a command team based on complementary skills rather than political connections? Precisely, Nira confirmed. Sirius 8's strategic importance now extends beyond mere monitoring. As our recent experiences demonstrated, this position can become critical to Federation security with minimal warning. I intend to ensure we are prepared for any eventuality. As they discussed the candidates, Marcus found himself appreciating anew the depth of Nira's strategic thinking. She evaluated each potential officer not just on technical qualifications, but on adaptability, ethical framework, and capacity for independent judgment under pressure. There's something else, she said when they had finished reviewing the files. A new assignment from Federation Command, delivered via a secured channel this morning. Her expression suggested complications. The Black Swarm's interest in biological weapons has escalated since our confrontation. Intelligence reports indicate they're exploring alternative sources, including several quarantine worlds similar to Credor. And we're being tasked with monitoring these efforts? Marcus guessed. More than monitoring, Nira corrected. When necessary, intervention. The Federation Council has authorized the formation of a specialized unit dedicated to preventing the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Sirius 8 will serve as its headquarters, operating independently from standard command structures. The implications were significant. That's an extraordinary level of autonomy, Marcus observed. And responsibility, Nira added. One I cannot accept without absolute confidence in my senior staff. Which is why I'm asking not just for your assessment of these candidates, but for your commitment to this expanded mission. Marcus understood the weight of what she was asking, not just continued service as chief engineer, but partnership in a mission with far-reaching consequences. He considered briefly, then nodded decisively. You have it, he assured her. Whatever comes next, we face it together. For the first time in their acquaintance, Nira smiled fully, a transformation that brightened her blue features and made her silver eyes sparkle with an almost mischievous light. I was hoping you would say that, Chief Engineer. She turned back to the viewport, where Credor's devastated surface served as a constant reminder of what they worked to prevent.